Welcome, everybody, back to You Have Permission, the show that aims to take both Christianity and the modern world of science and culture very seriously. And welcome to another Generation Gap Culture Hour. As always, I'm joined by editor and producer Josh Gilbert. Hey, Josh.
Woo! Hey, Dan. Hey, Tony.
Author, theologian, recent world traveler, Tony Jones. Hi, Tony.
What's up?
The first half of today's episode is on the main feed. Second half, the full version is only available to patrons. You can go to patreon.com/DanCoke to sign up for that and get full access. We got a lot to get into today. I'm excited. Here's a little table of contents. We are starting the fiscal year. We have a new season of bar, bank, church, or dispensary. It is the month of Jubilee. Tony's debts have been forgiven. He is no longer sleeping on the couch, so to speak. He's back in bed with Mama, and he's got a chance. He's got a chance to win this time.
The only thing lower than Tony's record is Trump's felony counts. That kind of came out.
That kind of worked. Okay, well, you miss all the shots you don't take. So
that's right.
We're going to do some more ways we're becoming like our dads. I'm going to try out a new segment of favorite headlines from the comedy Instagram account, The Hard Times, which sometimes focuses on music, which is very Josh and I friendly, but sometimes even religion and stuff. And it's just funny. It's like a more specific The Onion. Josh and Emily stayed with, let me see if I get this right, Emily's ex-husband's in-laws in California. Is that correct?
Kind of.
Okay, well, we're going to... Go ahead.
Well, I have to let you know that when I mentioned that I might talk about this, I did not get the best response from my partner.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll just leave it there. Maybe we won't do a segment on it. Tony and I have some questions, but we might have to ask them off mic. You're a stronger man than us, perhaps, Josh.
Yeah.
Is that it, Dan? Is that it?
It's funny because Tony's
man?
like, we got to talk about boundaries, and I'm like, my boundary is I do what I want, and I tell I tell you if I want to talk about it or not.
My boundary is I stay wherever the hell I damn well please.
That's right.
Ex-husband
exactly.
or no. After that, or perhaps instead of that, as many listeners no doubt predicted, Tony would like to talk about the city of Rome and the theologian Jurgen Moltmann. I realized after I wrote that...
Why would listeners have...
Well, that's supposed to be a bit. But I realized after I wrote that he passed away, and that's why you want to talk about him.
Oh, yeah.
His work has been important in your life, and so many of the theologian friends that I have and theologians that I really respect. So we'll talk a little bit about Moltmann. I have this idea of Christianity as a story we inhabit, either in opposition to or alongside other stories. It's a story that we sort of have the option of inviting our children into or not. It's just like a different lens, a different way of thinking about the Christian tradition and as well as other religious traditions. I kind of want to kick that around a little bit with you guys. And we still haven't really gotten to my hope for liberal mainline Protestantism. I haven't actually given the argument yet, right? I gave Tony one little chance to shit on it, which I appreciated, but I'm actually going to say why I feel that way if we have time. So that's what's on the docket. Any questions or reactions from the two of you?
I really think the table of contents, I think sometime we should try doing this, Dan, and you don't give a table of contents.
I've only done this like 2 or 3 times out of 10.
No, not true. And I think you're telegraphing the whole show, and then we often don't get to some of the stuff. So I wonder if listeners...
you know what? Agree to disagree. I think it's best practices for podcasting, personally. And I appreciate it as a listener. What?
Yeah, I know. No, clearly you do, because this is how you've started running the podcast. Even when you had me on about my book, you're like, we're going to talk about this, then we're going to talk about this, and then we're going to talk about that. But I mean, as a storyteller and a writer, let me just tell you that, like, leaving people hanging a lot of times, like building the suspense so people don't know what's coming, like give a tease, but then don't let them know. Don't show all your cards. Just an idea, just a thought.
Maybe I should add one more. And one of us will reveal something very embarrassing. Listen to the end to find out. Should I clickbait this shit? Okay, so noted Tony, thank you for the note, the live note. Listeners, feel free to weigh in on that in any way you see fit. Bar, bank, church, or dispensary. Fiscal year 2024, round one. I am kicking things off. Josh, will you remind listeners how the scoring works? So you get a point for anyone you guess right, and then how many points do I get if one of you gets a goose egg?
Yeah, for each person that you goose egg, you get 2 points, which I think has only happened like once or twice. But
yeah. I feel like now that there are 4, it's harder to goose egg people.
Yes.
And so it should give you 3 or 4 points if you goose egg someone, don't you think?
I think we can make a live decision to make it 3.
What do you think about that, Tony? 3 points for a goose egg?
Sure. I can roll with anything.
Okay. Well, for today's round, we are traveling to beautiful, pungent Tacoma, Washington. Okay? Ooh. Here are your 4 establishments, one of which is a bar, one a bank, one a church, and one a cannabis dispensary. Are you ready for the list?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, number 1, we've got Anchor. Anchor, like on a ship. Red Canoe. Red Canoe. Number 3, we have The Valley. And number 4, The Gallery. Rich text, Tacoma, wow. Google Maps.
Wow.
Just, I feel like so much hiding the ball here. This is a good one. A lot to work with. One more time. That's Anchor, Red Canoe, The Valley, and The Gallery. If you're playing at home, press pause, jot down, or think to yourself if you're driving, which you think is the bar, the bank, the church, or the dispensary. Whoever's got their picks ready, let me know.
This one's weird.
Yeah, this is tough.
You mean
I'm
good.
ready.
Thank you. I'll take the compliment.
Sorry, Dan. So good. None of these are a dispensary.
One of them is.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to go.
Okay, Tony.
Anchor Church.
Yep.
Red Canoe Dispensary. The Valley Bank. And the Gallery Bar. So once again, Anchor Church, Red Canoe Dispensary, the Valley Bank, and the Gallery Bar. I bet I went over 4.
And
okay.
Josh?
Mine is Anchor Church, Red Canoe Bar. We'll go Valley Bank and Gallery Dispensary.
Okay. Tony got 1. Josh got 2.
Oh my God.
You both got Anchor Church correct. Now that I'm thinking back on that, that's pretty guessable. I wasn't going to... That was the weakest link. It was the first one I found. You both got that right. The one that Josh got right and Tony missed was The Gallery is a dispensary.
Nice.
What?
As in, here is a gallery of all of our wares, I suppose.
Funny.
Yeah. The like photo, the photo on Google Maps just showed a lot of glass display cases from my brief look. And then Red Canoe Credit Union Bank. Never heard of it. I live an hour from Tacoma. And the Valley Bar. Huh. By the way, I had one clarifying question for future ones. There was one that was like 112th Street. And I thought that's interesting because that could be like a bank. That could certainly be a bar or a in that case, I think it was a dispensary. But I was like, we should clarify if that's allowed. Like a generic thing like Avenue C. I feel like we should probably just not allow things like street numbers because
I disagree.
You think we should include it?
I think we did do that once or twice in the last season.
Okay.
I mean, it's your game. You can change the rules, but
I like that.
Tony's gonna do all numbers for the next one.
I just might.
Okay, you have to limit it to 1. You can't have
okay.
Oh no, you can't. No. I think it should be all
Street.
all four, and then you could be like, I wonder which street the dispensary would be on.
Maybe we'll let Tony do that so he has a chance this year.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. Whenever you do that,
Josh.
Tony, I'm just gonna set up like a bullseye and some darts. I'm just gonna throw it, and whichever one I get closest to each time, that'll be my guess. And if I still end up beating you, then we'll know that you're cursed. You're not just bad at the game; that actually the Lord has something out for you, probably.
That could be. I mean, I've thought that for years.
Maybe that's something we need to talk about. Okay. Next up, ways we're becoming like our dads. Who would like to kick us off here?
I can start. Mine are always like abstract, and I'm constantly, I'm fresh out of 8 years of therapy, constantly thinking about my parental relationships, blah blah blah. But the
That's
one I'll
why
say
it's
now,
so good. Yeah.
So good. This one is kind of sweet. I don't. It's not to my dad's detriment, but my dad is kind of an abstract communicator. He says, I've said this kind of before, but he'll say a lot of words, and the meaning is kind of hard to decipher. But the reality is that he's like kind of a creative, abstract thinker, and he's funny, and he's working to like frame things in like a surprising way. So the piece that I think I'm becoming like him is recently I realized it's not that simple for me to communicate clearly. I really have to fight for like a plain, concrete explanation. And I realized I actually have more fun being unclear, being silly, being creative with how I speak. Yeah. And frankly, it makes me not the best on mic, so I have to like learn to hone it in and actually
you gotta
give the audience
yourself.
Yeah. So, years of working with Dan gets me trained to speak clearly, succinctly. But
do you think there's a songwriting, lyric writing connection there?
Oh, for sure. I mean, if there's like a style of lyrics that I have been writing or that I wrote, is that, I don't want it to be clear. I want people to listen to the songs many times and then sort of come to their own meaning. Like I don't want it to be overt. I don't love that. So there's a creative aspect to it.
Yeah, interesting. I think I have had a harder time with that kind of stuff as a lyricist, maybe because I am so at home in like straightforward, didactic, concrete, everything. Even like compared to other therapists I know who have a bit more psychodynamic or a bit more woo-woo in them. You know, I'm always like, how can we make this concrete? What's the goal? What's this client's goal?
No,
You know?
If there's another way to say it, my dad has feelings, and you can feel everything he says, but you don't always know what he means. And I've noticed a similarity with how I talk.
I have loved ones like that, so I know exactly what you mean. That can be infuriating, and it can be endearing and very fun.
Yeah, love you, Dad.
Very meaningful. Oh, Gilbert boys. Tony, you got one?
Boy, that's funny, Josh, because your dad's a preacher, so you'd think that would kind of be beaten out of him, but I don't have anybody in my family who's like that. I mean, that's just not how my family operates. Like everyone's a very straightforward, communicative, clear communicator. That's like,
since you guys both live in Minnesota and your families are both in Minnesota, correct?
Yeah.
Which of those ways of being is more classically Midwest? Isn't it Tony's family? That would be the more stereotypical Minnesotan thing.
Less emotion, more. Yeah.
I think my dad says this. I've definitely said it. He's less of a preacher, more of a pastor. There's the pastoral relational side, and then he happens to preach, and he's good at it, but it's more emotional than most, for sure.
Interesting. For me, I'm kind of running out of these, actually, so I'm gonna have to start changing them to like how I'm not like my dad, because that's much more clear to me. But I'll just say that we had a big family weekend. I threw a wedding shower for my niece and her fiance. I'm performing their wedding in August, so we had a big shower here in town. The wedding's in Oregon, but my brother came in from Oregon with his significant other, and a bunch of other people were in town, and then a few of us went up north to our cabin. And I knew this was going to happen. Like I was inside the cabin, and both my brothers and their spouses and my mom were all sitting out on the deck overlooking the lake. And I was inside the cabin, and I poured myself a drink, and then I took 4 Triscuits and put 4 pieces of cheese on each Triscuit and made a little stack of Triscuits and cheese. And then I was like, I just know it. I'm going to take it in the shorts as soon as and sure enough, here comes Dad. Because that's exactly, I mean, I even sat in the chair that my dad sat in and then lit a cigar like my dad would do. So I'm like, I just am going to lean into it because not everything my dad did was sucky. Like this was something I want to emulate, you know.
A drink and Triscuits and cheese, sitting looking at the lake,
and a cigar.
10 out of 10.
As
10
the
out of
sun's
10.
going down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was, I just knew it though. I knew as soon as I stepped out that
like, I'm gonna get
for
some
sure,
shit for this. Yeah.
right as soon as I stepped through the door. Yeah, I got it.
I like
That's
that.
good. If I had like a larger family of siblings and connected people, it would be anytime I would talk about a client, a de-identified client, that would be the way that people would make fun of me for being like my dad. Okay, mine is, you mentioned maybe 2 or 3 months ago, Tony, something about your dad's beard and your sort of shaving
Face dandruff
stuff. Yeah.
Don't wear a dark t-shirt. Yeah.
Listen to this one. Well, and I have to watch out for that. We discussed my beard care routine, I believe.
Yes.
Also, by the way, when I gave that sparkling beverage recipe, I got at least 2 messages from listeners being like, this is great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So maybe lifestyle brand is in my future. But here's mine. My mother has never seen my dad without a beard. She's never seen his shorn face.
Yeah, you've told us this before. Yeah.
Did I already do this one?
Well,
No, I
you told
didn't.
us this. I don't think it was part of how I'm becoming
Well,
like my dad.
it was the mini conference. You mentioned it on stage, but it wasn't.
So I
a
did it in the
prompt.
live one.
Yes.
But I don't think we did.
It wasn't okay.
It
Well,
wasn't a
I'll do 2
segment.
then. I'll finish this one and then I'll do 2. So Jaffrey has never seen my shaven face. My kids have never seen it. I've never seen my dad's. And I think I'm taking that one to my fucking grave. I don't think they're ever going to see me with a shaved face unless I lose so much weight that I don't have a double chin anymore. That's the cutoff. I look better with it. Nobody needs to see me without it. I've got pictures from high school. It's not an improvement.
Maybe we can make a little game at Beer Camp, Dan, where everyone comes with like razors, and then every time they talk to you, they have to get a little clip of your beard, and it could be this fun. Find him.
Oh,
which
just
house
people-
is Dan staying at?
Wow. Let's come up with a game where people come up and touch my face without me asking
With sharp objects.
with sharp objects. And then where are we finding my physical address? How is that being rolled in? I didn't quite understand
Kristen,
the mechanics.
it'll be part of the.
Then they get a clue to come knock on our door. I'm gonna go ahead and say no to that game.
All right.
I'll do another one since I already talked about that very briefly. So this one's weird. Like my dad was always trying to get me to be engaged with my little brother, and it got like very annoying later in life where it would be like he would kind of micromanage sometimes. Like if I was on tour and I'd be home for a week, he would like try and get me to do all these things with my brother, like specific requests to like take him to do this, talk to him about this. And I was like, Dad, like that's not how sibling relationships work. And you know, there might have been some wisdom to it, but now I'm totally doing it with our oldest to the baby. I'm like, can you play over here so he can watch you play? And I keep catching myself like, okay, some of these are fine, probably, but if I keep this up, I'm going to turn him off just the way that my dad turned me off. And so I'm kind of clocking it now. Did you guys have a sibling micromanagement from a parent at all growing up?
Not that I recall. I'm the oldest, and I don't really recall that my mom was like, I mean, I'm sure I was responsible for my younger brothers at times, but I don't remember that kind of micromanaging deal.
I hated it.
Yeah. If I'm honest, I think about telling my parents ways that I would treat my brothers and sisters differently. It went that way. Not that I was right.
You were managing from below, basically?
Yeah, I was more like, maybe
Oh
you
my
should
gosh.
tell, like, maybe you should, check in on my brother on this thing that just happened.
Okay.
That's a good brother. That's a good brother role.
So this brings us to Hard Times headlines. I got 3 this time. Maybe we'll only do 1 or 2 in the future, but I've been kind of saving these up for a while, and I need a place to put them. So that's here. Josh, let's briefly introduce the Hard Times. It's called the Hard Times News on Instagram. It started out as like a punk and like rock version of The Onion, but they've branched out to occasionally political humor, not like so the Babylon Bee is like another one of these sort of offshoots, like taking what the Onion did. The Babylon Bee started by doing Christian humor that was pretty funny and pretty wide ranging, but within a year or two started skewing pretty hard right and is now like full on a part of MAGA Nation. It's incredibly frustrating and upsetting. I unfollowed them years ago, but the Hard Times I feel like is really funny. It keeps making me laugh. I still follow the Onion as well. But it's a bit more, I don't know, maybe like focused on younger people or something, but I got a couple here that are kind of religion related and one that's not. Do you guys have any like relationship with Hard Times before I share these? Tony,
None.
no?
Never heard of it.
Honestly, I mean, I've looked into it since you talked about it, Dan, but it wasn't like a big part. I don't hear people talk about it, but it is hilarious.
Okay.
It's very funny.
Yeah. All right. So here's the first of three. Spilled CBD oil tanker leaves millions of marine life unsure if they feel any different. Have you guys ever, do you have CBD experiences where you're like, am I feeling anything right now? Like, what's the deal with this thing?
No, I mean, I think CBD is a placebo. So, I mean, no, none.
It might be a placebo for people feeling high. But there's peer-reviewed research on it. And it is like, it's an anxiolytic, so it's an anti-anxiety.
Sure.
It has properties like that. Anyway, okay, that one's pretty funny, I thought. And then a couple kind of more religion-focused ones. Christian rock groupie waiting until marriage to go backstage. No, too dad jokey.
Tony's unsure.
Tony's just not even. That's nothing. Okay, Tony, you might like this last one.
I don't think that's a grand slam by any means.
Okay, you might like this last one then. Man who experienced ego death sure loves flaunting it.
Yes. I think we've talked about that, haven't we? That's ironic.
And it's like a guy in a flannel holding a beer with like 3 other 40-year-old men around him or whatever. It's like that one's very much aimed at like our demographic of podcast listening, spiritually curious middle-agers. Yeah.
One I liked is how to spot signs of addiction and then ignore them.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, well I feel like I got a good enough reaction that I'm gonna stay open to this for future months if a couple happen to catch my eye. Let's move to Tony because Josh, I don't think we're gonna get much out of you about this California trip, right?
Just talking vague euphemisms about the living environment you're in.
Well,
there were trees. I slept on a bed. There was breakfast. Do it like a Hemingway novel.
Yeah, we needed a place to stay, and a place was available, and it was free for a week, and it was mostly us in the house alone.
Hey, Josh.
Oh, sweet.
If you need to be rescued, blink 3 times.
No, I wanted... tune in on the YouTube to see Josh blink 3 times. I wanted to say the reason I thought it was funny is because we kind of... We're in Emily's hometown in California, and it just felt like maybe a progressive thing or maybe something that we're comfortable with in 2024 that I wanted to address with you two. That we're staying. She has this separate relationship with these people. They happen to be related in this way that it is less related now or whatever. But there's a relationship there. So because I'm obviously a huge part of her life, I'm kind of, associated with her, obviously. And so we're just spending some time and it's like not weird. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, it doesn't seem like something I have heard other generations talk about. We spent time with the ex-in-laws and blah, blah, blah.
But whose in-laws were they when they were married still?
Her ex's brother's in-laws. So it's removed.
Her ex's brother's wife's parents.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like you might as well be staying with Kevin Bacon at that point. Like that's so many degrees off.
Yeah.
Okay.
But would you know them independent of that previous marriage?
No.
Okay. I mean, that's so... It's not like, oh, yeah, we knew them anyway. We just happened to be vaguely related through a former relationship. But this is like, no, we know them because they were like at our wedding reception, and I just stayed in touch with them after I split up with that dude. That
different. Wouldn't bother me. Neither of those would bother me. Neither version. Personally.
Yeah. I'll leave it there. There's more details as far as...
That's good practice. That's fair.
Blink 3 times if you'll tell us more details after the Patreon.
The safe word is olive oil. Olive oil.
Gross.
Okay, Tony, you went to Rome.
Yes, I went to
jealous.
Rome. Have you guys been to Rome?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been to Rome, but I did want to ask both of you, how often do you think of the Roman Empire?
Oh, yeah, this is that thing. Yeah. Very
I think
rarely.
of the Roman Empire a lot.
You think of it a lot
on a daily basis.
You were
I've written
Tony,
books on.
I don't know how much you've spoken about this, but you were at one point you were working on a series of historical novels set in the Roman Empire.
I've written
right?
two and a half novels about ancient Rome. Yeah.
So I've been to Rome, but not the way you've been to Rome, if you know what I mean. I spent like 3 days there once. I saw the Colosseum.
I think this was my 22nd trip to Rome.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I've been there a lot of times. I started going there in college. I lived there in college and studied there for a semester. And
Tony's responsible for 1/2 inch of sea level rise.
Many
from
times.
His Rome,
yeah,
from his
right.
Rome visits. So send your angry letters.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, me and Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Bring it.
Our jets.
First of all, if you successfully get 3 locks of Tony's beard, then we will reward you with his address, and you can mail him letters about his carbon footprint.
Please. People don't seem to have any trouble finding an address to send hate mail to me, Dan. So that's not really an issue.
We don't need to give him any
conspicuously absent from the YHP Facebook group now, but people still find ways. People still find their ways.
You know Where
mostly on Amazon.
The world? Okay.
Mostly Amazon reviews.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just, I've been in Rome a lot of times. I lead tours in Rome. I was leading a tour. It was an incredible time. And
what happens on that tour? What's the focus of it? Is it literary? Is it historical? Is it theological?
I've led various different tours. This tour, I was actually asked to lead. I went to Dartmouth College. I'm not Catholic, never have been Catholic, but the Aquinas House at Dartmouth is the Catholic student ministry.
Okay.
And they're celebrating their 100th year. So the priest and then a professor of mine approached me and said, would you lead a tour of some of the alumni from the Aquinas House? It's kind of like a 100th year celebration.
And for the centennial, we wanted to get like the oldest possible docent that we could to walk us around.
Well, my
GGCH joke. Okay.
My professor's
I'm sure those
88.
guys are all older than you. Yeah, exactly. I know.
My professor's 88, so he really, but he and I are he's one of my dearest friends, and we've been to Rome many times together, the two of us. So yeah, I mean, we went slowly because he uses a cane, but it's crazy. He's like a super ager because at age 88, his mind is so sharp. It's quite astounding. The amount, the facts, the dates, the names that he's got at his fingertips at any given moment is incredible. So yeah, we did. It was like 11 days, and we did most of it in Rome. We did 3 nights in Ravenna, which is a town on the Adriatic coast. And it was briefly the headquarters of the Roman Empire, and it's the capital of the world for mosaics. It's like where all the greatest mosaics that have ever been made came from Ravenna, and there are still several 4th century and 5th century churches in Ravenna that have some of the original mosaics. So that's just an unparalleled kind of place to visit that I'd really recommend anybody go to. But yeah, Rome's amazing. I'm going to lead a trip in 2026. I think Kent Dobson, some listeners may have heard of Kent Dobson. He succeeded Rob Bell at Mars Hill Church in Grand Rapids, and he leads trips to Israel. So he and I are cooking up, once the war is over, a tour that would be like 6 days in Israel, 6 days in Rome, and kind of track the growth of the early church. So yeah, I mean, you ask, my specialty is Roman Empire and early church historically, but I can do a lot of Renaissance stuff and that kind of stuff because there's a lot of that in in Rome as well. I would say to any listeners who are interested in Rome, I would avoid it in 2025 because the Pope has declared it a year of Jubilee, and they're expecting 34 to 38 million tourists. And Rome is going to be an absolute zoo. I mean, Rome is already, like, since COVID, the tourism in Europe has been through the roof, and especially in Rome. It's just almost like unbearable, the number of people who are visiting Rome. And it's just a weird confluence of people had a lot of money after COVID, and there's a lot of pent-up demand, and the tourism people keep thinking it's going to slow down, and it's not slowing down. Even when we were there in mid-May, it was a complete madhouse. But it's Rome, man. It's like the greatest city in the world. So I mean, I could go on and on about Rome, but I'm a huge
Give us
huge
two
fan.
reasons that it's the greatest city in the world.
Well, obviously, the Roman Empire is like an incredible, enduring legacy of Western civilization. The birthplace of Western civilization was Greece, but were it not for the Roman Empire, and the Romans were not great at philosophy. What the Romans were great at was government and infrastructure, and the way that they did things like build roads and build aqueducts and expand the empire, they actually, I mean, I know, it was brutal. It was a brutal place and time as well, but every place in the ancient world was a brutal, savage place. But it was really the, like, a rising tide lifts all boats, and what the Romans were able to do got Western civilization on its feet, like, economically. And so that's incredible. And then if you're, even if you're an ex-evangelical or post-Christian or whatever, to be at a place where the early church really transitioned from the house church into a kind of institutional or corporate architecture.
Yeah.
And to be able to see some of those early basilicas and see that was what my senior thesis was on in college, was the evolution of the basilican form of architecture. So I just think it was such a pivot point when Constantine converted, and to then see how the early Christians established themselves architecturally, and with all the decoration, I mean, including those mosaics. So I just think it's super cool. And the food, I mean, my God, the food and the wine and the people
Roma.
are so... The
wine.
The people are incredible. It's not like Paris. I mean, Paris has great food and wine, but the people are stuck-up assholes. And in Rome, people just like want to welcome you in.
Not to paint with too broad of a brush or anything.
No, I mean, I've been to both places many times, and those like caricatures hold up. So, yeah, it's just really a super incredible city with so much life, and So if anybody wants to go there, you can ping me and I'll set you up. I have a friend, and I also have, if you want to go alone, I have a friend who runs a Vespa tour company over there, and she and her crew. That's a fun way to see the city is on Vespa tours.
You're doing 2026, so maybe I'll
like
need
April
to go
26.
Treat myself as a becoming a
As a
doctor,
doctor?
trip. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Interesting.
Yeah,
All three of us can go together. We'll just make it a little
What?
GGCH.
Do a live GGCH Roman Empire
I have a
edition.
feeling, not to put my cart before the horse or anything, but I have a feeling that if Kent and I put together this Israel-Rome trip, that thing would be super popular. Like, people would, I think people, I've never been to Israel. I don't have much of a desire to go to Israel. Like, I don't. It's just never been a thing for me.
You brought up Israel. It's hard for, I am a little reticent to get into this, but I do want to briefly. I think especially because there is a really interesting generational aspect to the way that Americans are thinking about the war in Gaza. And I've seen some polling to that end, and it's it is just like a dramatic, ramp. The older you are by far more likely to support what Israel's doing. The younger you are, by far less likely to support it. And I'm kind of curious, at this point, so we're recording on June 5th. Things are evolving all the time, but this comes out tomorrow, right, Josh, the 6th? So, okay, so this is we're pretty up to date here. I mean, I haven't checked, I don't know, the last 24, 48 hours of updates or whatever, but my general sense of how this is, since October, been almost 10 months, right? And I am curious, like, I would like to hear a little bit from each of us and see if we kind of map onto that curve or if we kind of buck
That
the
is
trends.
a good question, Dan. I'll tell you, I am pro-Israel. I have friends who are Zionist Jews. I mean, even very liberal, LGBT affirming, like Reform Jewish rabbis who are still Zionists, because it's like, do you remember the Holocaust? This was a result of World War II, and this was an attempt to save an almost extinct group of people, like to give them some place safe where they could live. Unfortunately, that has all sorts of weird connotations to it. So, I mean, I will just say that, like, in my book, I even write about Israel briefly, and I make the statement, which I firmly believe, that there is no place on this planet that is ontologically superior to any other place on this planet. Like, I don't think that place is particularly sacred because Jesus walked there or because the ancient Israelites built a temple there. That doesn't make it more sacred. We invest our ideas of sacredness into a place like Israel, and people have. And of course, we could go, this is a whole nother conversation about evangelicals and their love affair with Israel, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean,
but you're asking about the war.
I'd as soon not talk about that part
of course. But of course, that's also part of where we all land on this thing.
Of course.
I'm pro-Israel. I think they had every right to defend themselves, and they should have. I think that, like a lot of my Jewish friends, I am not a fan of Netanyahu. I think they have overreached, and they have shown callousness to the situation in Gaza. And so I do track on this. Like, generally, I'm more pro-Israel. I think it's crazy when, like, feminists and queer people are like, queers for Palestine. Like, oh, go to Palestine where they will kill you for being out queer. Like, these are not people who even want your support, much less would be like affirming and welcoming of who you are as a human being. Like, this is an anti-democratic society. That doesn't mean that we should, bomb them into nothingness. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying this is not a Western democracy where there's tolerance. And then the last thing I'd say is this, is a prediction. I think there will be prediction. Here's a prediction. I think there will be an extraordinary amount of pressure on Israel to have a ceasefire in advance of the Democratic National Convention, to take the air out of that balloon.
Yeah.
So that Biden will not be, so that all the television footage of the DNC isn't people protesting in the street, chaining themselves to police cars, lighting themselves on fire. Like, that shit will happen if Israel is in full-blown, like, full frontal attack mode.
Yeah.
But I think the U.S., I'm guessing that, like, Blinken and Biden are working hard to get some kind of a long-standing ceasefire in advance of the DNC.
Yeah. Josh?
Amazing. I mean,
I also am curious,
sigh.
Josh, what you get from your friends.
I know exactly what Josh gets from his friends.
Yeah. What do my friends give me, Tony?
You're wearing the whatever. They're all wearing the Khalifa scarf, and they're all pro-Israel.
That's just because there's a new Vampire Weekend album. That's unrelated to Palestine.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, okay, I will say, and I'll just try to be transparent here. This is an issue that, for some reason, I've just decided that I've been exhausted with news, and I just haven't followed it that closely.
Understood.
And I know that, it's maybe one of the most devastating stories to follow, and so to have that be the one that I'm like just loosely, not following, whatever.
Can I interject just one generational lens here that is related to exactly what you just said? I am just old enough to remember the last time that there was like a live Israel, military situation. Was that early 2000s, Tony? Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I was born in 83. So I was like 19, 20, 21, whatever, in that era. And so that's a difference that that was exhausting then. And the position that I like at, in my early 20s, sort of where I landed on that eventually was like, wow, this is so complicated and no one really knows how to solve this. And nobody has found a solution. There may not be a solution. I certainly don't expect to be able to identify a solution myself for a situation this complicated. And that has given me a bit of distance from some younger friends who are like, well, they're obviously you side with the colonized. And I'm like, I have a historical memory of this from when I was just an adult. And I think that it plays certainly into our expectations of what will happen between Israel and Hamas and the Palestinian people. Yeah.
Maybe we should make people pay for the controversial take Josh is about to disclose.
Great time. Okay, right now we're going to the patron only feed here. If you want to hear Josh dox himself for all his Zoomers to send their all three of us are going to get hate mail today. That's great. Then head to patreon.com/Dan Koch. Okay.